Hello and welcome to episode 2 of Cricket Scorers Untallied. I'm joined as always by Sue Drinkwater and Jules Farman. When I say joined, we are obviously observing social distancing in the extreme this time by being in 3 different counties currently. Welcome back to those of you who are joining us again, and especially welcome to those of you who have found us for the first time. Episode 1 is still available from your favourite podcast supplier. As we passed 50 downloads for our debut episode, we metaphorically raised our bats to you all. Onwards to the next milestone. Don't forget you can get in touch via our Twitter account @CricketScorers1, and if you have any questions, use the hashtag #AskTheScorer. So typically, with the good weather, there is no cricket for any of us at the moment. Ordinarily, I would have been at the parks at Oxford University last Sunday, but unfortunately, no cricket so far. What about yourselves?
Well, I should be in the middle of a 4-day championship game at New Road. We should be hosting Middlesex there, which would have been lovely. I could have welcomed Don Shelley to the scorebox, but not to be.
Oh, it would have been probably an easy win for Worcestershire as well, but some things are just not meant to be. I saw a picture of a young Don Shelley midweek, actually. He was looking very dapper. I have to hunt it out and put it on our Twitter feed.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
That would be good.
Yes. Don may not be so happy about it, but I did see
I'm
that.
sure he will be if it's a young Don.
He's looking very, very dapper, I have to say. So, yes, I'll find that out and put it down. I was due to be scoring, I think, a 50-over match yesterday for Old Wimbledonians against, I want to say, the Bank of England. So, yeah, it's a bit of a sad situation, but you've got to make the best of what you can, haven't you?
Absolutely. So, in the meantime, where there hasn't been any cricket, I've still managed to talk cricket. So I don't know whether anybody's caught me on YouTube this week on the Runs Wickets Overs channel. I was doing a bit of a demonstration on Play Cricket Scorer Professional. So if anybody wants to join in this coming Wednesday, I'll be demonstrating the Duckworth-Lewis calculator on the PCS app.
Oh, my word.
So there we go.
Ooh, excellent.
Okay.
That sounds like fun.
Sounds like one you need a strong cup of tea for as well for the start of it, to work that one through.
Absolutely. But I think the app is quite widely used, especially because it's got the standalone calculator in it. So because you don't have to be scoring while you're using the calculator, which is really useful. So, I think it could be quite popular.
And yeah, the thing I really like about your YouTube channel, because believe it or not, I'm actually virtual coaching on a Wednesday evening at the moment, so I can't make a lot of the sessions. But what's quite nice is that you can go in and then have a look and just sort of watch videos back on how to linear score as well. So I've quite liked that, and it's been good to sort of share with people when I bang on about scoring, actually this is what linear is, because I haven't seen anything else out there which explains what scoring is about or what different types of scoring is about. So I think it's a really good sort of service that you're providing there, especially during lockdown times, for people just to get a bit of practice in and learn some new skills with scoring.
Oh, thank you. Well, that's what we've aimed it at, really, is just in this lockdown period to try and keep people talking about cricket and keep their skills up to date. So, yeah, I'm not sure whether we're planning on keeping it going forever, but certainly at the moment, yeah, it's providing a bit of a service for anybody who's missing their cricket.
Yeah, exactly. I have to say I'm in theory scoring a match this afternoon, a game of dice cricket for an independent cricket radio station called Guerrilla Cricket. And I've just opened up the Play Cricket app and I'm thinking, oh my life, what am I doing here? So that could be, following this podcast, a bit of a sort of hasty, quick try and work out what I'm doing here and entering in the team names and stuff. But it should be quite lively, and knowing the guys at Guerrilla Cricket should be good fun as always. So yes, I think by the time this podcast comes out, we would probably have sort of played the match. But yeah, do have a look as well on Guerrilla Cricket if you fancy looking at some different types of scoring and of a cricket match. It's certainly going to be interesting.
That sounds quite amazing. What happens then in dice cricket?
So this is a voyage of discovery for me too. So from what I saw of their YouTube feed last time, they have like the little Zoom screens, and it's all split in four. So they have two of the commentators, they have the scorer / compere, then they have in the top left-hand corner a plate, and literally a dinner plate, and their sound engineer rolls the dice, and then it has whatever sort of comes up on the dice. So it has on one dice, it has 1, 2, 3, 4 and 6, and how's that? And then the other dice has the various modes of dismissal, including a not out as well. And so if you fancy having a look at dice cricket, then check us out on the YouTube channel. That could be quite interesting later. Apologies, sometimes the language can be a little bit choice on guerrilla cricket, so if you have sensitive ears, I think today we've got some quite fine upstanding gentlemen commentating, but there is the occasional strong word, so just a little bit of a warning there if you do sort of listen for the first time.
Excellent. Sounds great fun.
It sounds quite fascinating.
I think it will be. It's either going to go amazingly well or it's going to be a bit spicy. But we shall see. We shall see. Up for anything new, mate, especially if it means we get to score.
So the three of us, just to explain, normally or occasionally we get to update the scoreboards at Lord's, and that's where the idea for this podcast was born. One rainy day when there was no cricket, we came up with this idea, and it's taken quite a while to get it off the ground. So have either of you supposed to been there recently?
I was supposed to be there last weekend with Jules, actually. So I think we were due to spend... I was certainly supposed to be there for 3 or 4 of the days. So, and lots of other fixtures, which are sadly going by the wayside.
Yeah.
It's one of those things where you look at your calendar for your phone, you go, oh yeah, I should have been scoring Middlesex knots. Oh look, I've got a T20 game coming up I should be scoring. So you put you in your calendar at the start of the year and you realise, oh, it's not there.
Now, I remember a little while back being at Lord's during quite a high-profile game, and they always have a cricketing celebrity who rings the bell at the start of play. And one day I can remember seeing Jules very smartly dressed in a yellow dress, if I remember rightly, and she was ringing the bell, which was absolutely wonderful. Jules, could you tell us a bit more about that, please?
Yeah, I was keeping it MCC with the dress. I couldn't find, I think I was wearing a red belt, but I was trying to keep as MCC colours as possible. So yeah, I was very, very lucky to have been awarded Cricket Community Champion by the MCC. Probably it's the first year that they ran it, and it was about people or sort of rewarding and recognising people that do sort of lots of stuff for cricket in the community. And there were some amazing people on the shortlist that had done work at their grounds for a good 50 years, doing different bits and pieces. And whether that's making the tea, sorting out the grounds, being the scorers, being an umpire, or just a general all-round good egg. And thanks to sort of a wonderful chap who does a lot of cricket at Dinton Cricket Club, a guy called Mike Sutcliffe. He heard about this award process and put me forward for some of the sort of cricket scoring stuff that I was doing at that time in Bucks. So that was running scoring courses and various things to engage sort of young people, especially young scorers, into the game, and bits and pieces I was doing in the county with girls cricket, but also for stuff that I did with the charity Cricket Without Boundaries, which is a charity that uses cricket as a way of delivering sort of social and health messaging in different countries. So we started in East Africa, in Rwanda and Uganda and Kenya, and then we sort of branched out. We've got Cameroon, we've got Botswana, and then we've done more recently stuff in Jordan, and we're about to start stuff in Brazil. So it was one of those, that was the background to it. And I have to say, when I looked at the shortlist, I was sort of thinking, oh crikey, there's some people here that have done some amazing things with cricket, and I've only been sort of doing stuff like really for the past sort of 10 years. But it was nice to be recognised. And I have to say, and I always say this to people, I never realised how loud that bell was. And you kind of think it does make sense that it's loud, so it reverberates around Lord's. But I did the first dong of the bell, and it just went boof, and I remember flinching back because it was so loud, and then thinking, well, I'm going to have to give this the right old razz, because otherwise people are not going to hear it. But yeah, it was one of those people ask me about it, and I have to say that it was not a blur, far from it, but it was one of those days where if you could have a dream day of cricket, apart from the fact that England completely collapsed, but we'll come back to that later, it was just amazing in terms of being up in the MCC chairman's box, in terms of meeting various cricket dignitaries. So I was there, pretty sure it was Matt Fleming at the time, and then sort of meeting various people and sort of shaking. I shook so many hands that day, it was unreal. And then going up into the media centre and then being interviewed by Bumble, which was unreal. So he kind of did this whole thing up in the media centre where we were like panellist guests, and he was sort of mocking it up. So he was doing his usual Lancastrian jokes and stuff, which was amazing. And it was hard not to completely collapse in giggles as we were sort of doing a mock of cricket analysis thing. And then we got to meet some of the Test match special team. They were majority of them were quite nice, and then had quite a nice conversation actually with Ed Smith, which I know if I meet Ed Smith again, I must make sure I haven't had a couple of glasses of wine before meeting him, just because his brains and intellect are like, all my life, I just need a strong cup of tea and I'm with you. I'll try and join you, as he's off on some sort of ethereal cricket thing. So yeah, it was quite the experience. I think at the time, don't get me wrong, I absolutely appreciated sort of being nominated and being recognised. But I think looking back now, it's kind of, and talking about it, you kind of sort of realise, I think at the time I was maybe the fifth or sixth woman to have donned the bell, and the people before me were absolute legends of the game, like Claire Taylor and Charlotte Edwards. So it's a bit sort of some bird from Luton that's done a bit of cricket in the community. It just seemed a bit of a surreal situation, but it is what it is. And they still keep running the award, which is really, really good. Because I think there's so many unsung heroes. I'm not including myself with that, because to be honest with you, I'm just jazzing around with cricket for the past 10 years and sort of falling on my feet with a few things. But there are some amazing people that sort of give up their time to do what they can to grow cricket and to develop cricket, and they do this over a number of years. And I think I had heard an interesting stat once that like about 90% of cricket is run by volunteers or something along those lines.
Yeah,
and I think
Yeah, absolutely.
Whatever we can do to recognise, support and reward the volunteers that make cricket happen, and for people to just be able to be involved in whatever that is absolutely vitally important. So yeah, it should be sort of encouraged, and especially at this time as well. I see lots of things on the internet where people are raising funds for their club, or they're doing sort of, I don't know, charity events online, or sort of race nights online, or bingo, just to sort of raise some funds for the club. And you're thinking they don't have to do that, but they're taking the time out to try and support the clubs during this really difficult time to make sure cricket can still continue to be played. So hopefully, I think, those guys will get recognised for all that they're doing to keep their clubs going in future years.
That sounds great.
Absolutely.
So how long ago was this? And it was during a test match, wasn't it?
It was, I'm just trying to think, it was, I want to say 2017. And it was a one-day international. Right. It was England versus South Africa. And by the time I dong the bell and managed to get back up to my seat again, I think England lost about 5 wickets, and it was only about 20 minutes. So that was why it was quite... the amount of people, I came back that evening and I had numerous text messages and tweets saying, "Don't ever you dare ring the bell at Lords again. Look at that. What a state. We left it in your hands and that's what happened." So, I think that's a lesson learned for everybody.
So you mentioned the charity Cricket Without Boundaries and lots of African countries. Can you tell us a little bit more about the charity and what they do? And have you been out to those countries with them?
Yeah, so as I was saying, Cricket Without Boundaries it uses cricket games, and we'll come back to that in a second, as a way of talking about social ill health messaging in the community. So it was founded by 3 guys that travelled from Cairo to Cape Town, and were just doing it as a bit of a jazz holiday after their studies to be lawyers, and to play cricket in different countries. And the thing that they found was that quite a lot of people were being affected by the HIV pandemic that was ongoing. and really affecting communities in the country. So what they started to do was use cricket as a way of breaking down stigmas, so getting HIV positive, HIV negative kids and adults as well playing together, but also to raise awareness of HIV and what people could do to try and sort of protect themselves and support themselves. So it then developed on to being a sort of a charity that worked in, I can't remember the country now, so Uganda, Kenya, Rwanda and Botswana initially, working along with the cricket boards. And they would go and do sort of cricket-like skills. So there'd be catching skills and teaching people how to properly catch a ball like you would do in cricket. But for example, where you would say you protect your hands, no crocodile catches, so like that, but you have like a sort of nice sort of wide, I can't demonstrate it on Zoom, but nice sort of wide hands, and not sticking your fingers out. But you protect your hands like you protect yourself in life and wear a condom, for example, because condom is one of the ABC's messages, which is abstain, be faithful, and if all else fails, wear a condom. So it's one of those, it's a UNAIDS message. So it's abstain from sex, but you try and tell a 15-year-old lad to abstain from sex, it's a bit difficult. So you sort of abstain from cheating on your wife, or abstain from excessive drinking, which could lead to sort of bad behaviours. Be faithful is be faithful to one partner. You've got C, which is condom, and then you've got the added ones, which is testing, so know your status, which given everything that's going on at the moment with COVID, you'll see quite a lot of health experts talking about testing, and that's so vital just to know what your health position is, because once you know, you can then get treatment and then you can then support others. So we'll have cricket games where, like I say, we'll do the catching drill, and then we say, right, we're now going to go and do a test. I like the fact I'm doing all the actions like I'm sort of doing a session with the kids, but we're now doing a test. And what we would then do is say, right, you've got to do 20 catches, high five your partner, make sure you're faithful to your partner and throw the ball accurately to them, protect your fingers at all times and abstain from wild throws. And then you'd fit the messages in that way, and you do fun games of cricket. And then we would hold sort of festivals and tournaments, but it's not just playing cricket and having mass participation events. I mean, the projects that we initially do go out there for 2 weeks at a time. And then what we will do is train up teachers, cricket coaches, people within the community with no background in cricket and sometimes no background in sport, to be able to then deliver basic cricket drills and fit in the messages, and then they will continue going on to deliver. And I think key to our sort of delivery model, especially in these countries, is having ambassadors. So they're cricket coaches which are part with the Cricket Association of that country and then part with CWB, and they go into schools and youth centres and deliver the programme sort of week in and week out. And I think the beauty about the charity, as the name suggests, is without boundaries. So when I joined in 2012, 2013, I joined because I was a cricket enthusiast and I was a scorer, but I wasn't a player and I wasn't a coach, and I never had played apart from with my dad and my sister in the back garden. And sort of going out there, they were just sort of, it's absolutely fine that you've never played before. Sort of the main thing is that you're sort of prepared to do that, and you don't need to be an extrovert either, even though I am. But we have, it's like I said, it's a charity for all people, because it's, you can have sometimes the best conversations you can have is one-on-one with someone, and then you've got someone else like myself who's the mouth almighty, sort of running around with 500 kids in a field with cricket balls or tennis balls. So there's that. And then charity is growing, so we've gone over to Cameroon, which is great because you get to do cricket in French, which is always quite interesting, or the Cameroon coaches do it, which has led to me playing an international game of cricket, which was something to be beholding, and having to do sing the national anthem, which was quite fun. So you see at the start of like games where people line up and they all sing the anthems.
Yes.
We had that with a kind of a slightly out of tune brass band playing the national anthem, which was just, and the best thing about it, I mean, to be fair, the brass band did blooming well because it was bloody hot day, and we were playing. It was in the capital, Yaoundé. But they were like, oh, okay, we're going to link you up with some of the Commonwealth embassies, because we were quite a small team. So they linked us up with, I think, the Australian and the New Zealand embassy, which meant the New Zealanders were fine, but the Australians weren't so happy about singing God Save the Queen, I have to say, which amused me greatly. And the Kiwis are just, typical Kiwis, just humble, kept it kind, and just sort of smiled. Yeah. But it was quite a fun game, and I was quite relieved that we didn't play over hardball, because that pitch was just something else. So I have visited all the countries that we do our projects in, and there's the overarching thing where you're working with kids and the similarities, and you're talking about HIV awareness and breaking down stigmas, getting boys and girls playing together so everyone's on an equal basis. But each country has its certain nuance as well. I mean, as we speak about and talk about Rwanda, but a lot of the work that we do there is actually, it's sort of building sort of more of a community spirit, probably nearly 30 years on from when the genocide was, and how cricket is being used in the country to get people playing together. In the work we do with Kenya, we've worked in the past with the Maasai cricket warriors, who, as you can imagine, dress up in Maasai gear and play cricket. But their whole work is to raise awareness about gender equality, and supporting girls within their community, rather than them being married off at a young age and not going to school, because they realise that actually if girls or women end up sort of dying young, which invariably happens with various practices such as FGM, which is female genital mutilation, if that goes wrong it can be quite savage. There to actually make sure the girl gets an education, is supported, means that their Maasai culture and traditions, and the safe ones, can continue. And they just use cricket as a way of basically having a little bit of a niche on it and getting people to sort of understand and recognise what they can do. More recently, we've started to do work, so we've gone from being sort of CWB Africa to being CWB Global. So we started to do work in Jordan, working with refugee community, and that's been absolutely fascinating. Slightly spicy at times, because we've coached very close to the Syrian border. So we're in sort of camps or sort of host communities, which is probably the best way to describe it is sort of towns and cities which are in Jordan, but they have quite a large population of people that are displaced from Syria going out and sort of being in the community, so to speak. And what is cricket is being used for there is more just to build a social sort of togetherness, because it is very segregated. This person's Assyrian, this person's Palestinian, this person's Jordanian. There's split schooling. There's a bit of resentment because, I mean, Jordan is a relatively stable country around a lot of other countries where, for want of a better word, it's all kicking off. And using cricket there has been just a way of bringing people together, but actually for those that have been really affected, just a way of using, cricket as a sort of cathartic tool. I wasn't actually at this session, but a couple of my colleagues were. We were doing some work actually in Oman with a school there, but the guys were coaching, and it was probably within about a mile of the border, and with kids that had literally just been displaced from Syria. And there's a game that we do where we get kids to write down what are their fears, what are their worries, what are their concerns on a whiteboard. And then they put them next to some stumps, and then they get tennis balls and they'll throw them at the stumps, just as sort of like an aim, sort of target throwing. And essentially what happened, I think, because they talked about their fears and their worries, and they talked about the Assad regime and everything they experienced, and sort of losing friends and family, or, they don't know quite where they are. They wrote it down. Some of them threw the balls, and then the rest sort of charged and started sort of taking up stumps and stuff. But they found it as a way of getting information. Sort of a lot of the charities and humanitarian organisations have a way of getting information out of the kids by generating that discussion. And then if they, with all the sort of, I'll put it in inverted commas, anger, but upset that they could then find ways to support them and get sort of psychological support within the community. And they were saying that, cricket had been quite a good way of generating those discussions and conversations that they've never been able to do before. And, we've done a couple of other sort of quite similar, not similar, but other ways that we've done that in the UK as well, working with predominantly girls from lower socioeconomic backgrounds, again, that don't have the opportunity to speak or just sort of tentative and nervous about speaking. And, doing a whole sort of facilitation of whiteboard discussion, and building up a rapport and a safe space by playing cricket, managed to find quite a few things out about them, which means that actually then they can go and get the right support that they're needed, whereas, in the time before they've not been able to do that through just having a general discussion. So it kind of shows, it's a bit more than just jazzing around in a nice sort of, well, sometimes a nice foreign country, playing cricket, but actually what cricket can do, and the power of cricket to, try and help not just deliver some good in the community, but actually support people that need supporting and also, help facilitate that support. And it's also great fun just running around with a bunch of kids and a tennis ball. It's amazing what can be done. And you get to, I've coached in some amazing places, and I think, I think I'll probably, at the time you don't realise it, but then you sort of look back, and I was thinking about this morning on the run, and I was thinking, crikey, I've coached kids probably in the lowest place on earth, right by like in a sort of a football pitch near to the Dead Sea. I've coached in top of a rooftop in a Palestinian refugee camp. I've played a national game of cricket. Seen cricket played in a church because there was no safe space to play cricket in the community, which was unreal. They pulled all the pews back, and then they played like a little sort of ad hoc game of cricket. So there's all like these girls running around. This was up in Durham, just playing cricket. And you're thinking it's one of those things that it's a complete world away from having a green pitch and, blokes in whites and an umpire, and it's all very twee. It's mad cricket, but it is great fun.
It's fascinating.
Yeah, it is fascinating, but it sounds as though you've had some amazing experiences, but done some phenomenal work. I would have had no idea that you could use it to get the information out of the children, like you're saying, because they don't realise, I guess, that it's a sort of serious discussion. They're more relating it to the game so that they're more likely to talk.
Yeah, absolutely.
Gosh,
And it's not just running around with cricket balls as well. I mean, sometimes you get kids that they just, like in any country, they don't want to play or run around with tennis balls. So if that's the case, it's actually quite fun because I can then get them doing scoring. So, in Cameroon, I got taught a really rascal way of scoring, which is, I call it the Cameroonian box method, which I did have a picture of, but I've lost it. So I'll have to sort of mock up another sort of drawing of it. But we were counting the runs that were being scored by the team, and this kid literally got a stick. It was quite a muddy ground that we're playing on, and he was literally drawing a box, but it was like one side of the box for one run, one side of the box for the next run, and then one side of the box for the next run, and then once 5 runs were scored, it's a diagonal, and then he'd build it up. So we were able to count the runs on one side and count the wickets on the other side, which was brilliant, which I've sometimes used like in a very sort of quick sort of kids match that I've been sort of doing. And we've run umpire and scoring courses as well, because like you say, if there's a way of bringing on and developing the game, that's great. I did once do a scoring course in Rwanda where they told me that it was a modern technology college and they had all mod cons. So I thought, oh, crikey, I'm going to have PowerPoint and stuff like that. I had a blackboard and chalk. So this was one of the first projects I went out there. And I've got the pictures, my backdrop on my actual my own Twitter page. But at the end of it, one of the scorers got out his DJ decks and decided that he was going to celebrate having a scoring course by having an impromptu sort of DJ set, which meant that all the other scorers were then treated to like this musical extravaganza of Afrobeat. So it's different.
Certainly sounds it. It really does.
Brilliant.
Wow. Right. Well, thank you, Jules. That really was interesting. I learnt a lot in there. So and it sounds as though that your charity does a huge amount of work. So yeah, give it another plug there. Tell us the name of it again.
Yeah, so the charity's called Cricket Without Boundaries. We're pretty much all volunteer-led, with our ambassadors who are working sort of day in, day out in country, although when they can. Although I am starting to see pictures of them doing social distance coaching again, with very small numbers.
Yeah.
So it's they're having to obviously adhere to government guidelines, but they're wanting to get back coaching. So yeah, Cricket Without Boundaries. If you fancy joining us on a project, then come and check us out on our webpage. If you fancy donating, then that's all on there, and you can find out all the stories and all our blogs and pictures, so you can see a bit more about what we do.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jules.
Okay, shall we move into our final section in the podcast, which is Ask the Scorer. And last week, I posed a question at the end of the session, which we said we'd answer this week. So I'm going to remind you of that question, and then I'm going to hope that Jules and Brian might have an answer for me. So my question was, I described a little bit of a scenario where Team 1 had already batted and they'd made 245. Team 2 were also on 245 and they'd lost 8 wickets when the batsman hit the ball. The batsman that was on strike was currently on 98. He hit the ball and they ran 2. But what I asked was, what was the result of the match? What was the final score? And how many runs did that batsman end up on?
Well, unfortunately for the batsman, the match is over when 1 run is scored. So the batsman remains stranded on 99.
Yep.
Of course, the only time that would be different is if a boundary had been scored and they hadn't completed the 1 run for victory.
Excellent. Yes, the batsman would have been very disappointed. You're right, but when that 1 run is scored, the fact that they went on to run another one, is completely irrelevant. So with just that 1 run being scored, that took the total to 246 for 8. So the result of the match is
Team 2 won by 2 wickets.
Absolutely. That's what I was going to say as well.
Excellent. Yes, I agree with that. So because it was the side batting second who won, we define it as a number of wickets, not as a number of runs. So with 8 wickets down, yes, Team 2 won by 2 wickets. And interestingly, that ties back to the question that we did answer last week, which was how to score stumped off a wide dismissal. Because if that had happened in that scenario, instead of them attempting 2 runs, if that had happened in that scenario, it would have been a similar result, that only the wide would have counted as a run and therefore would have finished the game, which means that the stumping would not have counted. So the result would still have been 246 for 8 and they would still have won by 2 wickets. So that stumping would have been completely ignored and we might have had a very upset wicketkeeper if he'd done a good bit of work there. Do either of you two have a question for us this week? I think Brian might have had one.
I do have one, yes. What we'd like to know is, what is the difference in scoring-wise between a batsman who retires from being injured, unable to carry on his innings, and a batsman that decides that he scored enough runs and therefore he doesn't want to bat anymore and he wants to give one of his teammates another go. Typically, you would see that in probably a pre-season friendly before all the league stuff happens. So what is the difference in your scorebook? We're going to assume a box scoring system, I think, for this, but of course we can cover linear and PCS Pro as well. But what would be the difference in those scenarios and how would you record them?
Okay, so we'll hold that thought until the next episode and we will come back and answer that one for you in the next episode. Thank you, Brian. If you want to ask any questions, if you want to sort of pose a question for Ask the Scorer, then we do have our Cricket Scorers Untallied Twitter account. You can always put a question in there and we'll keep an eye on it. And we also have a Cricket Scorers Untallied email address, which off the top of my head I can't remember, but I'm sure that I think Jules might remember that one.
It's cricketscorersuntallied@gmail.com.
If you want to ask a question in this section further or for a future episode, then please do drop us an email to that address. If you want to know any more about any of the things that we've talked about today, then again, put something in our Twitter feed or drop us an email, and hopefully we will include something in a future episode for you. Now, we put some photographs on the Twitter account last week of the different scoring methods that we had talked about during that episode, and it was really great to see another picture put up there by one of our listeners, Mike Turner, because we talked about when linear scoring that you didn't have or top and bottom scoring in both, you don't get anywhere to cross off the tally. And Mike Turner put a picture in there of a sheet that he was given that could be used for that purpose. So you could use it for accounting the runs when you're using a top and bottom system. So we're very grateful to Mike for sharing that with us. And if you want to have a look at it, then take a look at our Twitter account.
Hey.
And hopefully be back to see you again or to speak to you again next week in episode 3. So thank you, Brian. Thank you, Jules.
Thank you all.
Bye-bye for now.
Thank you all. Goodbye.
Bye.